So I just sit at
Okay,
the
that's right.
chair.
Last.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So I'm starting, right? Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Olena Berezovska, and I'm welcoming everyone at this podcast with Lynn Festa, my special guest, because we had another podcast about burnout. Hi, Lynn. I'm glad that we were able to do this podcast. And I'm so fascinated because I like listening to Lynn, and she gives a lot of useful information. And Lynn Fasta is from United States, and she was a professional therapist for many years. And then one day, going through burnout, she decided to change her specialization, and she became a specialist in psychology, psychological coaching, actually in burnout. But another specialization, it's about high sensitive person, which is very interesting topic. And today we're going to talk about this high sensitivity or high sensitive person or personality. I don't know how to say it too. That's why, like, I'm going to give the word Lynn. Lynn, welcome. I was waiting for this podcast.
Yes. And thank you for having me. Yes, I've been an occupational therapist since 1988, so just a few years. Yeah, and about 11 years ago, I started going into more coaching and using those OT skills. But yes, going into more coaching, and along the way, as you know, we're always doing work on ourselves too. I found all about the highly sensitive person.
Mhm.
And in 2019, I became an HSP knowledgeable professional. So one of my niches, besides burnout, and they kind of go together, is working with a highly sensitive person,
Mhm.
which is a term that started by Elaine Aron, is actually our pioneer in this work. And she started doing heavy research on this starting in 1991.
Thank you that you mentioned this, and more information about Lynn, you can find it information about this video. Just scroll down, and also don't forget to press like and subscribe to my channel to see more podcasts, including with Lynn. She's my favorite speaker. I don't want to offend other speakers, but Lynn, I feel such a good connection that I
Yeah.
could talk with Lynn probably for hours. Yes. And Lynn, when I was thinking about this topic we chose and your specialization, I remember like there are two different words we use in Europe mostly. It's like extra sense, a person sensitive to external, some kind of like signals and like stimuli. And then never like I hardly heard like somebody use the word intrasensor, like extrasensory and intrasensory. Intra, it means sensitive to something like from inside, and probably sensitive to external signals, but also going a lot through inside stimuli. Maybe it's a very close name for this high sensitivity person. I don't know, but you will explain more.
Mm, yeah.
So tell us more a little bit about,
Yeah, sure. That's a good opening.
publications or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So the common term that we all use is being the highly sensitive person. The
Mm-hmm.
research term is called sensory processing sensitivity. And then somebody named Willow McIntosh is also doing a lot of work in this, and he calls it high sensory people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest thing I really started out and I want to drive home is this is a trait and it's not a disorder. So there's a big difference. This is very different from a sensory processing disorder. This is different from ADHD. This is different from a lot of the neurodiverse terms that are common. Now, you can have a mix of things, but when somebody is highly sensitive, we make it clear that it is a trait. It's not something wrong. And the term that we all like to use just to kind of help normalize when people start to figure this stuff out, we say, look, you can't change being highly sensitive. It's how you were born. It's like trying to say, just be taller. But we can talk about more of like the more you understand the sensitivity and your own sensitivities, there's just different ways how to interact in the world. And having said that, too, what we always make sure is the world is not designed for the highly sensitive person. The world is designed for the other 70 to 80% of the people who don't see themselves as highly sensitive people. Now, having said that, some of the other things that make, again, done in the research, it's 50-50 male and female. So 50% of people who identify as male can also be highly sensitive. It's not shyness. And I realized this too, because before I figured this out, I used to think, oh, I'm shy. And everyone would say, oh, no, Lynn, you're the farthest thing from shy. And I thought, okay. It's found in 100 species of animals.
Wow.
So it's actually, yes, dolphins. Yeah, I remember a bunch of them, but think about a dolphin and how sensitive they are. So it is 20 to 30% of the population. And the more that they're doing the research on it, we're finding that they're the higher population of people who are highly sensitive.
So saying this, we can suggest that there is a genetic factor, because if you say it's almost equal in men and women, and also we have in animals, so it must be genetically predisposed to be this high sensitive person or person,
Yes.
like, I mean,
yes,
human being,
yes.
whatever,
Yes.
animal.
We are born sensitive. The other thing that I think is helpful to make sure that we talk about too, because we talked about it's not shyness, as we know for people like myself, but it is 70% of the people have introversion, and 30% are actually extroverts. So you can have somebody who can go out and be that extrovert life of the party and still be highly sensitive. We tend to be visionaries, inventors, artists. My favorite example of somebody who is highly sensitive, and she's the documentary that Elaine Aron did about a year ago or so, is Alanis Morissette. Think about what she does. She's a big rock star, filled with thousands of people. Her music is real, to me, rock. And she's highly sensitive. So it doesn't have to be that original description of the shy person sitting in the corner.
And what are signs of high sensitive personality person? What are the signs? Because everybody likes to kind of complain, oh, I'm so sensitive to stress, I'm so sensitive to that. But in reality, it's just like conversation and attracting attention. When in life, these people might be not even sensitive, just like. And so how can we see these people?
Yeah. Oh, what a great question. Thank you for that. So, when I start to explain this, and people always felt like something, again, not wrong, but felt off to them, when they start to do this aha, they'll say, oh my goodness, that's the missing point. That's the missing link. I also want to make sure that I send everybody to the Elaine Aron's website too, because I like to send people to free, very objective websites with lots of resources. It's called the hsperson.com. Again, that's the work of Elaine Aron's. And anything I talk about in here too, you most likely will find that she's done a really good job of explaining it even further. But the acronym that we like to use, again, who doesn't love a good acronym, is DOES, DOES. And the D of the DOES stands for depth of processing.
Mhm.
And that's something where I kind of make the joke of we're like the Pringles potato chips of people, where we will process something to the point where it doesn't even look like, a Pringles is hardly a potato chip because it's so highly processed.
Mhm.
Um, and we just tend to be very reflective. It's almost to the point of, I want to call it rumination, and that's when it becomes an issue. And that's something that we realize, wow, I'm just going over and over and over this in my head. And sometimes we will then want to find like other experiences in our lives that we want to constantly connect those dots, when not everything in life has dots that need to be connected. So
Mhm.
that's the D. The O in the DOES acronym is actually probably the one that most people start to notice or really connect with at first, and that's called overstimulation. And that
Mhm.
could be to sight, sound, smell, movement, noise, that's the sound, bright lights, things like that. And what that happens is our sensory systems are just almost like we don't have a gauge for some of those things. And
Mhm.
when, say, I like to use and the example of me again
Mhm.
is me in a crowded restaurant, where it's really loud and I can't hear the people I'm with, and I can't, I'm just I'm taking in all of that noise and all of those lights to the point where I get actually very stressed out in a restaurant too. So that's something for me, and that overstimulation. And again, everybody's a little bit different with this. Some people don't like smells are too strong. Perfumes sometimes can be very noxious when the other person is fine. So that's the overstimulation. Having said that, that's where I see the strong correlation between people who are burnt out and people who may be highly sensitive, is that we get more overwhelmed, meaning like our buckets get drained much faster. So we need a lot more downtime. And I finally accepted the fact at the ripe old age of 57 that I just need more sleep than the average bear,
Mhm.
because my body is wearing down sooner. So the E of the does is two parts. And the one that I want to start with, the positive one, is empathy.
Mhm.
We're to the point where people who describe themselves as empaths, and we pick up on that emotional contagion in a room, so to speak, and we pick up on other people's emotions. I without even realizing that we're doing it. And that also can lead to some of that fatigue that I was just talking about, because without even trying, we're taking in somebody's distress. So we're very compassionate people. We're very much, in the helping professions
Mhm.
sometimes too, because we just have that connection on almost like a deeper level. The other part of the E is something that was all kind of a work in progress too, is emotional reactivity.
Mhm.
We tend to be a little bit quick to react to things. So that's something I find myself working with clients too, is like working on responding, taking a breath
Mhm.
versus that immediate reaction.
Mhm.
And typically, as highly sensitive people too, being um, leaning towards wanting to do it right, and do it once and do it right is also the thing that we really want to do. So we tend to react a little bit more, maybe if things don't go um, quite as we plan to. So that's something too, is getting people to work on taking a minute, calming the sensory system down, and then responding to things. So and the last one, which I actually think is the superpower, it's the one I've decided that I'm just going to, really make as strong as I can, and makes it one of my signature strengths, is sensing the subtle. We can read a room so fast, and we have that extra sense, to use that word too, of something's up. And
Mhm.
we notice things. And it's actually quite fun now too, because I'll notice that somebody got a haircut, because that attention to detail is very strong. Um, and I'll be like, hey, nice haircut. They're like, way to go. And almost without realizing it, going in and taking that assessment of a situation. So we can really, that it's a little bit woo woo, but it is something true. Going back to emotional contagion, which is a real thing, is really picking up on what's going on in a room when it's going well, or, sometimes when it's things are going a little sideways. So that's the DAWs. And that's a wonderful way to kind of break down and give a really good snapshot of what the highly sensitive person's makeup can be.
Wow, wonderful. And whenever you describe this 4 letters, like meaning for this 4 letters of acronym, I'm actually thinking about myself. I'm really a high sensitive person because it's all match my personality. Maybe that's why I became a doctor, because I always wanted to help people and animals. And even recently, I tried to save a baby robin that fell from the nest. And I really tried to save, and unfortunately, I couldn't because of some other reasons. But, I felt upset, and I was sensitive to the subject when actually my husband said, calm down, it's a nature, like it happens. But I remember once I was driving like 300 kilometers, like it's almost 250 miles, I guess, far, far away outside Toronto, bringing a little baby squirrel because I couldn't feed the squirrel. I had to go to work. I couldn't leave, without supervision. So I found a little veterinary clinic somewhere somewhere around, somewhere in the forest, which like marvelous place where wild animals are kept and given a chance them to survive. So I brought this little squirrel to this place, and I was crying, giving away. And it's funny when I
Yeah.
remember like all these little stories of mine, then I realize like I'm really sensitive, not
Mhm.
crying when I watch a movie
Oh,
in most cases, but I mean I sensitive to people and animal, and it's me who I am, right?
yes.
And
Yeah. And
uh,
thank you
and,
for bringing that up too. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
another
Because
question.
that's one.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that also brings up a really good point, is a very strong connection to nature, a very strong connection to animals, is something that HSPs is a short way to connect, or identify is the word I'm looking for, to that, is HSPs have a very strong connection to animals, very strong connection. And that goes back to the reactivity too. We're more quick to cry a little bit faster, which is difficult
Mm-hmm.
as a child too, if we're told, oh, stop crying, you're being
Yeah.
so sensitive. Um,
It's
but we're
it.
also,
You're right, because like I have no problem with animals. Like they follow me, and
yes.
the dogs loves me, even like people surprises the dog just licking my hands right away, and
Yeah.
be friends. And children also, I have no problem with children. Children,
Yeah.
they love so kind of like open to me, and people surprised because like how can children talk to me so openly? But I sometimes I feel myself like a child too. That's why probably I'm so comfortable with children. But now you explain this like to
Yeah.
me and to other listeners and viewers, and now I start understanding more who I am in a way. Like I'm a sensitive person. I have to accept it, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
we didn't know the true name of this, not condition, but how to say, even like it's not a condition, it's just like description of
Not.
personality, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you, so if we have this high sensitivity going through our sensor system as well, different types of sensor system, because like, as you said, some people cannot smell. I mean, they cannot tolerate the smell. Some people cannot tolerate some like noise, right?
Hmm.
But it's not always a comfort to be high sensitive, right? So what is the symptoms or signs, let's say, like it's not a disease, the signs of when we over hypersensitive people, like because sometimes we have discomfort, not a comfort of the situation. So what could be wrong in this situation when we react too much?
Excellent question. One of the best places to start, and that's where, again, go back to hsperson.com. Elaine Aron has a very short quiz you can take because everybody has their quiz. I am going to say that it has been validated, but she is updating it too. And we've also
Mm-hmm.
learned to say, with the quiz too, like if we used to say, oh, if you got 12 out of the 20, then you were highly sensitive. And that just doesn't, they found that didn't stand up to the test of being valid and reliable in the
Mm-hmm.
science. So they are updating it. However, what it does is get you thinking about where you are on the spectrum, on a positive word, of how sensitive you are and what you're sensitive to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a wonderful place to start. The second part, again, I'm going to drive home. It's a trait. It's how you're wired, and understanding that there's actually, up to 30% of the population, you actually have a lot more company than you realize too. So practicing that self-compassion, the common humanity part of the work of Kristen Neff, is understanding that there's a lot of people. And the more you actually start having this conversation, at least in my experience, the more I've been bringing this out, I can't tell you how many people turn, look at me and go, oh my God, that makes so much more sense. Thank you so much. So
Mm-hmm.
really understanding where you fit in on that too. And one of the quotes from Elaine Aron's book too. So if you want to do a deeper dive, you can find, we call it our Bible, on her website too. But the quote that I have from the book, and I probably go over this with every single client, is we need to pick and choose and not drive our bodies into the ground. HSPs drive their bodies too hard, and that is their intuition, which gives them a steady stream of creative ideas. So we always have something going on in our heads. They want to express them all. You cannot. You have to pick and choose. Anything else is arrogance and cruel to your body. So really understanding that, again, going back and picking and choosing what's important, owning it. And that actually another area that this themes in my coaching tends to be on boundaries too. HSPs, we don't have the best boundaries because we're, empaths, we're compassionate. We lean towards being people pleasers. So boundaries are something too, is really saying yes when you want to say yes, and saying no when you really just don't want to do it, and using no as a complete sentence too. So working on that's a work in progress too. But setting boundaries is something that helps a lot. Again, once we figure out where we weren't setting them.
Mm-hmm. Actually, the saying no, it's a huge burden for some people because they feel afraid or ashamed or they don't want to offend. So they have a lot of restriction inside and some barriers to say no when they really uncomfortable. It's probably another study, another kind of like area of human personality when they cannot say no, and actually they got themselves in a more deep negative condition instead of stop doing this, like stop actually being afraid that they can offend someone and they will get negative emotion or negative feelings from this person. And I'm glad that that you brought all this because now I hope and I believe that people who listen to us, they start finding something new that matches the description of high sensitive person, and then probably they would say, yeah, it's about me. Actually, I never saw it this way. So this is not a disease, as you said, not some kind of like ill condition. or something unusual and abnormal. It's part of our life. Like it's genetically predisposed, and we got our, like we say, genotype, and this is genotype under some circumstances give us absolutely different type of personality than our probably parents expected to have. Right? And even us, like being in society, living in society, we probably expected something different. That's why I think another problem among these people, maybe I'm mistaken, but this is the game, I would say, in the perfectionism, like be perfect, right? Because they think that that's some kind of minus, and we have to improve ourselves and stop being so sensitive. And then we got in a bigger problem, not accepting who we are.
Yeah, yeah.
It was marvelous, Lynn. As thank you very much. I mean, I was listening, and it's a really interesting subject, and I hope it will help many people who will follow us on podcast. And also, as I mentioned before in the beginning of this podcast, Lynn and me, we had another podcast on burnout. Also, a lot of new information, and that's why please subscribe to the channel and watch this podcast with Lynn Festa from United States.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn, for amazing conversation.
Yeah.
And I hope we'll have another one podcast, because we can choose. There are so many topics we can discuss. And I really appreciate that you agreed to have this conversation with me.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the last message I'll send out is embrace it, and just figure out how you can turn this all into your superpower. So there's so much good out there, and understanding this. So
Yeah, thank you.
thank you for
Bye.
having me. Bye.
Bye-bye.